I am Patty Ertzberger. I work for Babynet, and I specifically work for the Rainbow and Pickens County's offices of Babynet. Some of you, I know some of you, I'm glad to put a name and a face. And I know some of you in this room know a good bit about Babynet. For the purposes of this, I am going to kind of do Babynet 101. Just to introduce you to what we are and the basics of what we do, and then we'll, of course, be glad to take some questions. I've been with Babynet for 21 years. And we have been through a lot of changes, and we are currently going through a great deal, many more changes in terms of trying to how to better deliver services to the population that we serve. But I'm going to go over what we're doing right now with the caveat that in the next year or so, some of that may be changing, okay? So you may need to come, I may need to come back in that period of time. We are part of an education law. It's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Everybody's heard of IDEA. That is a huge law. It covers kids from birth even up toward college if they qualify. But Babynet is limited to the birth to 3 section of that law. And so we serve children who have significant delays in their development, or they might have a condition that might cause significant delays. And taking that word significant, South Carolina, as in most every state in the nation, you have a choice about what your eligibility criteria is. So it is different from state to state. Some states have chosen to serve children who are at risk. South Carolina, like many of them and like most of them, have not, simply because of probably the cost. We are serving children who have significant delays. We have a list of qualifying diagnoses. You can find those on our website, but some things that typically would be a qualifying diagnosis for a child to be eligible for Babynet services would be something like Down syndrome, extreme prematurity, which is a child born 28 weeks or less gestation at birth, spina bifida. There's a 2-page list of syndromes. Some of those in the 21 years I have not seen. It is not an all-inclusive list, so if you're a person who's out there thinking to make a referral to Babynet and you have a child with a strange chromosome abnormality or some kind of genetic condition and it's not on a list, doesn't mean it could not be. It just means we have not yet identified a child in South Carolina with that particular thing. What we have is a medical consultant who would perhaps add that to our list. We consult with in Columbia. And what they kind of go by to add a diagnosis to a list is this diagnosis 90 to 95% of the time associated with significant developmental delays? Okay? So you're eligible either by diagnosis or you're eligible because you have a significant delay. And this is the majority of kids that we see. What we do in my office is we get referrals from anyone. Anyone can make a referral to Babynet. Our #1 referral source is probably physicians. Behind that comes parents who have found out about us by word of mouth or in some fashion. But we get a lot of referrals from Head Start. We get some from the Child Find System of Preschool Services if they get a referral from somebody who's under 3. We get referrals from therapy providers, those kind of things. But most often I'm going to get a referral from someone who calls in and says, my child's not walking, my child's not talking, my child's having some behavior issues, this kind of thing you get. And so anyone can make a referral. We do not screen those referrals in any way. If a parent wants to have their child's overall development screened or evaluated, they may do that at no cost. Tax dollars have paid for that because this program is supported by federal and state dollars. And so a parent can come in, and normally if they're coming in because of developmental delay or suspicion of that, we may do a screening of that child. We have a variety of screening tools that we use. Some of our providers out there are already doing screenings, and that's wonderful in the community when you have a doctor who's already done a developmental screening on a child, or they're coming from another source and they're coming with that screening. But even if that child passes that screening with flying colors, if that parent says, I would like to have a complete evaluation done, they are entitled to have that done with us. And we're using something called the Battelle Developmental Inventory at the moment and it looks at 5 different areas of development, and under the law, every child must have an assessment of those 5 different areas of development. Those are physical skills, gross motor, fine motor, your hearing, your vision, but it's also self-help, social, it's communication, and it's learning or cognitive. To be eligible for Babynet, you have to have a 40% delay in one of those 5 areas, or you have to have a 25% delay in 2 or more. We have local teams in our office that review everything a service coordinator does. And it isn't as simple as just doing a developmental eval and looking at scores and saying the child is eligible or they're not. Because what we're charged to do is, if anyone else out there has seen this child, if they've had a therapy evaluation, if they've had anything done, if they've seen a specialist, what we want to do is collect that information, and we want to put the whole picture together. Because it is not solely based on scores. The law mandates us, and when I say law, I'm talking about federal law, and then you've got Babynet policy under that. But the federal law mandates us to look at children under a process we call informed clinical opinion. And that really is just a review of all of the information that we could obtain to make a decision, are there significant enough delays to certify this child's eligibility for Babynet, okay? If they're not eligible for Babynet, there are children out there who have mild or moderate delays in their development. They need help. So we're trying to refer out to an outside source. This is where we love to come to places like this and learn about as many resources as we can, because those are the folks that we've got to use to make referrals for children. So we're referring out. Sometimes we suggest to them they come back, because coming to Babynet, and a lot of time a parent doesn't realize this when they walk in the door, it's not a one-time thing. You can come back as many times as you need to through our system. And we take referrals up to about 34 and a half months. Now you might wonder, if we're birth to 3, why would I stop taking a referral at 34 and a half months? Well, one of the federal guidelines is that when I get a referral, the clock starts ticking. And we have 45 days to collect information, do a developmental evaluation if necessary, to determine a child's eligibility, and if they're eligible, have something in place you call an individual family service plan. If you're familiar with school district services, children get something called an IEP, an individual education plan. An IFSP is a baby IEP. Essentially is what it is. And we have to have that done within 45 days. So if a child, going back to my question about a child being 34 and a half months, if they come in then, the 45 days has elapsed before they're 3, before we would have time to implement a plan. So we're making referrals outside the system for those children as well. But if they come into the system and they're not eligible, just to reiterate, we're going to try to refer them somewhere else for services, or we're going to tell them, you can come back. If you're not eligible this time, do come back. And we frequently do that, because that way, I have a lot of children I see that they've been in. No one has seen this child really except maybe the physician and us. And so if they come back in a couple of months, maybe those scores don't quite show that 40% delay or 25% delay in 2 areas, but if I can show a downward trend, I can even appeal to a review to my central office. We need to make this child eligible, because things are getting worse. Okay, so it's not just scores. The particular tool we use too is called the Patel Developmental Inventory. It requires you to score it as the child's age as of that date. I'll give you an example. I had a baby I saw who was 29 months old and 28 days the day I saw that child. That child's scores did not support eligibility. But I looked at it, and because the age expectations changed for the test 2 days later, that child was eligible. If I had seen the child 2 days later, we made that child eligible. Because it's not, you don't want to base something on a test. You want to base something on what the child's needs are. And that child's not going to make those changes in 2 days, a week, that kind of thing. So we use a lot of creative ways to look at children, to look at the situation, to look at what we've gathered to determine eligibility for Babynet. Now, I often tell parents, okay, you're eligible. So what happens? We have to do something. The next step in that process is logically to proceed to doing an individual family service plan. That's where the family is assigned an ongoing service coordinator. And that can come from a variety of places. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they sit down with their ongoing service coordinator and any member of a team that might be present as somebody who's already serving that child, if they can participate, like a speech therapist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, maybe hearing, vision, somebody like that. And you're going to write what we call outcomes for that child. In simple terms, I think parents understand a little bit better when we say we're going to write some goals. What would you like to see your child doing that your child's not doing now? What would, if your child could do this, how would it help your child? How would it help your family in daily functioning? And we are about using whatever services to help the family help their child. Not to take over and do treatment. Babynet is not a medical program. It's not a rehab program. It is about using certain providers and services to help train that family to help their child. But you sit down in an individual family service plan meeting and you write goals or outcomes for that child. When those goals or outcomes in place, you look at those and say, okay, what services does this child need or does this family need in order to help this child? Possible services. Now, Babynet lists, and it may be, some of those may be listed in this brochure. There's about 16, 17 possible services. What a child actually gets depends on what that child needs, what that family wants. As a professional or somebody who's done an evaluation on a child, I might recommend your child might benefit from physical therapy and speech therapy and occupational therapy and hearing services. And if that family's priority is not one of those or two of those, they can say, I'd like this service from you, but I don't want these. Okay? Now that's federal law. Federal law really guides so much of this huge process. Federal law is the one that requires we have a plan in place in 45 days. Federal law requires that we give the family 7 days written notice anytime you're going to have a meeting to do a plan or to change something about a plan or to propose to change something about a plan. As children grow, what they need in the beginning may not be exactly the same thing they need 3 months from now. So we are built to change. But the family always has a right to have 7 days notice in writing that some discussion, some service is going to change for that child, or we need to talk about it at least. Other rights are, they have a right to confidentiality, so I can't share any information about that family or get any information about that family without their permission. I want to talk a little bit about funding. I think that is always interesting to people. There's no charge for service coordination. There's no charge for doing an individual family service plan. There's no charge for anything that my office does as far as doing evaluations or anything like that. If we do put a service in the plan like physical therapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy, something that employs a specialist kind of outside that system, we ask families who have insurance, as an example, to allow us to try to bill their insurance for services. They do legally have a right to decline that. But if they allow us to try to bill insurance, but the insurance company says, we have no benefits for speech. But speech therapy is in their plan, that family has said they wanted it, and they've signed that plan acknowledging that, Babynet will pay for it. And when you consider services like your therapy services can be anywhere from $75 to $350 an hour, that can pretty much break anybody's budget if you have insurance. We ask families to allow us to access Medicaid for services. Medicaid will pay for a lot of the things we do. Medicaid will pay for some of the service coordination that we do and that kind of thing. So we do ask them to allow us to access those Medicaid benefits, or at least to share in the information with Medicaid. There's been some changes that came down to us from federal law. It's been there for a while in South Carolina. Really didn't recognize it for a while, but the family can't legally refuse to allow us to use Medicaid if they have it. If they don't have Medicaid, however, but they might be eligible for Medicaid, we cannot require them to apply for it. Okay. In that sense, we would pay for those services. Babynet, as an example, over the past few years, has averaged paying about $1 million a year for speech therapy alone for families in South Carolina. So that gives you an idea of how much, that is used and how much insurance might not cover or so forth. So that's been a big thing. But at any rate, you get together. We're going to go back to what happens when you're eligible. You're going to do this plan. You're going to form goals. You're going to decide on what services. One of those services that we offer is a service called special instruction. That's where Beth's going to talk in just a few minutes, because Kid Ventures is one of several providers that provides service coordination for children, and they also provide special instruction. And I'm going to let her talk about those services specifically. In my office, when a family is eligible, if special instruction is determined as something that this family is interested in and this child might benefit from them, we give that family a choice of providers. In Greenville County alone, that family has about 14 choices right now. And I can't recommend one, I'm not allowed to, but we give the families a list. We ask them to use the resources that they have to research those providers, and they can look on websites. We suggest they call them and talk to somebody personally about what would you be doing for my child. A lot of families come to us now, more and more and more, they walk in our door, they don't even know who they want, which I think is really kind of neat that they've already gotten out there and networked, or they know a family member or somebody who's used the service before, so they'll tell us with them. The other only comment I'll make, most of our kids out of my office is primarily concerned with determining eligibility for the program. So we see a lot of kids in our office and right back out in 45 days. It's a constant flow and a constant system going like that. With one exception, if a family did not want a service of special instruction the way our system in South Carolina is designed right now, or that family did not have a hearing or a vision, the child didn't have a hearing or a vision impairment, they do need an ongoing service coordinator to carry them through the rest of the process. And that would default to somebody back in my office. So we do have some ongoing service coordination kids that we serve until they're caught up, they've met all their goals, or until they turn 3. So we have some of those, but the vast majority of the children that come to my office are determined eligible and will go on to someone else in the Babynet system, because Babynet is not a program. Babynet is a system of services. And in that system is the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs. It's the South Carolina School for the Deaf and the Blind for kids who have hearing and vision impairments. So there are probably anywhere from, when they funnel out from my office, there's anywhere from 45 to 50 possible service coordinators that could have picked up that child. So it is a huge system. And when you think about, we also are looking at trying to serve children in the natural environment. This is a big issue with us. This is a federal mandate. If we identify a service that a child needs, like speech or OT or PT, we are mandated, if at all possible, to serve that child in that child's natural environment. Now, what is a natural environment? Natural environment is home, but that's the first thing everybody thinks about. Child's natural environment might be their daycare center that they attend every day. It could be Aunt Susie's house. It could be grandmama. We have on some occasions served a child at a park. Well, why would we have done that? We have served a child in a pool. Why would we have done that? It's because that's where the child was having trouble functioning, okay? So I've had therapists who would actually go into those environments to help, okay, how can we help this child participate in this environment where typical children go without disabilities? So we are mandated to provide services within the natural environment. We have contracted, or Babynet through the statewide has contracted with different therapy providers to provide services in the natural environment. We do not have nearly enough. We contract with other providers in outpatient settings, but we are mandated to use the natural environment if it is available first. So that's an ongoing issue with trying to find services for children and get them delivered. I'll mention one other thing. We don't simply look at a child who's about to turn 3 and still has some problems. We don't look at them and say bye. We are mandated to start talking to the family from the beginning, really, that we do end at 3. But to really start some planning with that family and discussions with that family about what is going to happen at 3, to even start that at 2. And we are mandated to make a referral to the Greenville County School District's preschool services at 2.5. Now, the family can elect not to allow us to share information with the school district. They can tell us they are not interested and they don't want to do that. We are mandated to send directory information to the school district, which gives them an opportunity to at least explain the services to that family firsthand, at least by phone, so that they are fully informed about, do I want this option or do I not? You know, that kind of thing. But we're doing that kind of thing as well. But we talk to families at 3 also about things like what other services out in the community might meet your child's needs. Because this child might have made so much progress, and we certainly hope they do, they might not qualify for preschool services with the school district. But they may need a jamboree class. They may need your dance program to help them with their motor skills to kind of refine some things there. They may need some, or they may choose to participate in some private speech therapy. Families get very attached, as you can imagine, to their speech therapist or their physical therapist or occupational therapist. And so we explore options. Can you continue that service without Babynet funding? So we have those kind of discussions in trying to prepare them for what we call transition, which is transitioning out of the Babynet birth to 3 into the next phase for them. I'm going to pause here just for questions for a second, and then let Beth kind of pick up and talk to you about what happens when she gets that file. And so, anybody have any questions? Rob?
Can you speak to what happens when they're transitioning out and maybe refer to DDSN?
Yes, and Beth can probably do that a little bit better than I can. If a child is receiving the service of special instruction while they're with Babynet, the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs can review that file, and if there have sufficient delays present to meet criteria for the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs outside of our system, it's possible they could continue to receive special instruction past age 3 up to 5. Up to 5. And get service coordination, yes. And certainly, I always look at that when I get a child in my office and a parent, he's 33 months old, okay? Those ones just kill you because you've lost all that time. And we've got 3 months. We're going to see you, we're going to see. And if that's a child who comes in and they have delays in multiple areas, I'm really trying to process that as fast as I can, hoping that when Beth and those folks get that child, they would be able to expand on that information and have enough information in order to be able to keep that child particularly. Sometimes that's we're able to do it, and sometimes you're not. If you get a 33-month-old and the only thing that you can find is just a speech delay, they can sometimes go right into the school district. And we might get them an eval before they turn 3 and maybe a little bit of service, but there's not a lot of time.
And you all fall under the umbrella of First Steps.
You want to know how that is, yeah. When I first started working for Babynet, the federal law says you have to be under, the governor has to determine a lead agency for you to be under. We were under DHEC for years and years and years and years. And the governor moved us several years ago to the Office of First Steps in Columbia. Well, the confusion comes, I think, because First Steps has what they call county partnerships in almost every county across South Carolina. And they are pretty much autonomous. They apply for grants and they run programs to try to serve children, you know, to get them ready for preschool and doing different things based on what the needs of their community are at the time. We are not under those county partnerships. We are a separate program within the state office of First Steps for Babynet. We are trying as time has gone on to collaborate with each other some in those areas. I know we're, particularly for Pickens area, they are really do a lot of things hands-on in that county, and so we're on a committee with them to talk about things and how we can complement the work that each other does. But we are not, we're under the same state agency, but we are handled entirely
So
differently.
who do you report to, the state or?
Here, we do not report to the local First Steps at all. We don't have any, there's no direct line of supervision or anything with any kind of local First Steps board in any county. All of our schools go directly back up to the state office. We have a Babynet director who is Christy Music at the state office, and she is directly reportable to the director of First Steps there. So that's how that chain of command goes back up. Any other questions? The spiel you just heard, unfortunately, a great deal of it has to be done for every family I see. I was talking to you, I think, for somebody in the meeting earlier this morning. I'm required to talk to that family when they walk in my door about what their rights are under the law. What we're doing, they have to be fully informed and give you consent to do a screening or to do an evaluation. And you have to go through all this stuff. And it's a little sad sometimes because that family comes in my door and the only thing on their mind is my child can't walk. And they love it when I get to the part of it where we're doing the developmental evaluation and you can sit down and you can play and you can talk about what this child can do and what he's not able to do and look how great that is. And that's the part of it I think they retain. So people, it's a lot of information for a family to absorb, particularly when they're coming in and their head is where their child is, which is where it needs to be. But it's really, really difficult with that. So as you meet families in the community, anything you can do to help them understand from your point of view what we do or what we're going to do. We get referrals a lot of times. We still have work to do out in the community with providers, even physicians, who a family will come to my door or I'll get a referral from this and I'll contact the family and they think they're coming to me because I'm a physical therapist. They think they're coming to me because I'm a speech therapist and that's why they think they're there. And that's all they're kind of told. We're sending you to Babynet to get a speech about. Well, not every child that comes to Babynet is going to get a speech about. You might if you're eligible, it doesn't, but you won't get a speech evaluation unless we get you through the eligibility process and it's determined that that's part of what needs to be done. So, any other questions? All right.
Thanks, ma'am.